This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, and just Brian this week for Breaking Down Security. We're doing the post-holiday, ramp down back to the office this week, and Mr. Betcher, he's out. He doesn't actually even know I'm recording this. I just have been doing a lot of stuff this week over the past 4-day U.S. holiday here, and I wanted to put out some thoughts about some of the stuff I've been looking at. So on our Slack page, if you listeners have not heard yet, we have a Slack channel that you can come in and discuss security questions, or if you have a question to ask about anything in related to security, you can join us there. But one of the things we started doing was a book club, and we're in a second meeting of that so far, and the book we're doing is the Gary McGraw book, Software Security, Building Security In. So one of the things I was reading at our first session on Chapter 1 was methods by which you can insert security into the software development lifecycle. And I just thought it was kind of interesting because we talk about it a lot. We're like, oh yeah, you should, be as, do what you can to get, security into all areas of the software development lifecycle. And a lot of people may ask, well, that sounds good, but what can you do specifically to do so? So if you have the book, or you have the ebook, which is available on Safari online, you can buy it there, or you can just buy a Dead Tree copy because it doesn't come in a Kindle ebook. I'm on page 28 of Chapter 1, and I was looking at the various graphic parts of the software development lifecycle. Graphic 1.9 mentions basically the software development lifecycle, where you have requirements and use cases, and then you go to the architecture and design section, and test plans, code, tests, and test results, and then finally feedback from the field. So the idea is, that's what you do for the software development lifecycle. And it talks about each one of these bins has various places where security can be thrown in to assist or make a part of the life cycle a little more, logical and manageable. So, for the requirements and use cases, you can, when you're going in, I guess it's important to mention before, one, you need to find a way to make sure that you are invited to the discussions of these kinds of things. And it may be that you have to talk to your manager, you may have to discuss with the CISO, why it would behoove you to get in there. You may bring up examples of media talking about various breaches, or I think the what if thing, I think the what if, what if we do this, or, what if we get breached or whatever. I think that's going to kind of fall on deaf ears, that you're going to need real concrete type information, like, various breaches of your competitors, or, they're running a CMS, they're running a WordPress instance, or they're running a database, and it was hacked, and this is how they did it, and we're using a lot of, from what I can understand from the, emails and everything I'm seeing, that these vulnerabilities could show up in ours, so, I need to be there to discuss that. So sometimes you need to, bring a little ammo to, kind of plead the case, if you will, about why security needs to be involved in your software development lifecycle if it's not already. Or, maybe it needs to be expanded. Maybe you're only working in one area of the software development lifecycle, and you need to, add more to that. So one of the first things you want to do in the software development lifecycle to get yourself in there under the requirements and use cases is making sure that requirements based on security are being added, like if your application requires the use of passwords, then you want to make sure that the passwords are properly hashed with a one-way hash algorithm. Or if you're doing any kind of transactions over HTTP, making sure that you're using HTTPS and TLS versus HTTP and or SSL v3, or poor ciphers in the SSL suite like ARC4, that kind of thing, or RC4. The other one that Gary mentions here in his book is something called abuse cases, which I had to look up. So according to our good friend Wikipedia here, a complete abuse case defines an interaction between an actor and the system that results in harm to a resource associated with one of the actors, one of the stakeholders, or the system itself. So that means that the interaction between an actor, or could be the user, and your application results in something going wrong. So, maybe a denial of service could be considered an abuse case, or let's say your system mails something out and you leave it vulnerable to things like being used as a spam relay. So people interacting with your system could use it for nefarious purposes, that kind of thing. So it all could be considered misuse cases as well. So those are they use kind of hand in hand according to Wikipedia. The final bit under requirements and use cases is doing a risk analysis, making sure that anything that is the functions of the system doesn't leave anything open to being a detriment to the company or to people using the system. Risk analysis, of course, are qualitative or quantitative. So you have to decide on what the impact versus the potential for, something happening. And, that's something you can look at during the requirements and use cases. You can also look at it during the architecture and design section of your SDLC, because when you're architecting something or designing the application, that can you can see design flaws when you're doing a risk analysis. So as you find as you go on into his book, he adds a lot of additional weight to the various sections, some of them being more effective than others. The risk analysis he considers fairly high, and you can do those in various areas of the SDLC. So he also has under test plans, which is the third version, risk-based security tests, and he describes those as: security testing must encompass two strategies: testing of security functionality with standard functional testing techniques, and risk-based security testing based on attack patterns, risk analysis results, and abuse cases. A good security test plan embraces both strategies. So what he wants you to do is, understand. It seems like the risk-based would be more tabletop exercises. What happens if we did this? What should we expect? If we do X, Y, and Z, what should be the result? That kind of, especially in the test plans area, because the test plans are what you're going to use when you're doing the tests and the test results to make sure that everything is functionally ready to be deployed. He seems to think you get the most bang for your buck just doing code reviews, which would happen alongside the actual coding of the application. And as he states on page 86 in chapter 3, all software projects produce one artifact, code. This fact moves code review to the number one slot on our list. So he says, well, it's the only product that is actually created, so you should be, looking at the product to make sure that everything you're doing is being done as securely as possible. But he says, a caveat, is doing code review alone is extremely useful, but given that this kind of review can only identify bugs, the best a code review can uncover is about 50% of security problems. So there are flaws and defects and other things that he talks about that should be looked at as well in the long run. In your risk analysis or your when you're doing additional testing to find architectural flaws or if you're leaking data or that kind of thing. So we plan on having Mr. McGraw on next week to discuss his book and a bunch of other items that are going on. I wanted to keep this podcast a little short because, I'm a man down. Mr. Betcher is usually my better half and is kind of the Abbott to my Costello here. So, actually, he's the straight man. I'm not the straight man, so that would be the way that works. So, I'm just going to, go through these last few things here. He suggests penetration testing. And of course, you got to remember, this book is almost 10 years old. So we're going to ask him, if anything's changed in the last 10 years. This book, I think, was published in 2004, 2005. So it's almost 11 or 12 years old. Has he made any, updates? Would he do any updates to the book? Are things like security operations more important now than, say, risk analysis in this case, or maybe there's some additional things that he feels that could be added to the SDLC to make security more baked in. I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't call it the SDLC or the secure SDLC, that there should be a software development lifecycle that's created that automatically includes security, because it seems like the SDLC was created and then we tacked on security like we normally do with most everything that is done in business. So that's why we've had to insert ourselves instead of being included from the get-go, because it wasn't done right in the first place. The SDLC was not designed with security in mind. So the last two things were tests and test results, where you're going to be doing You're going to take your test plans and your risk-based security test, plans and scenarios, and using those to do functional testing. You may do UAT, which is user-assisted testing. I believe it's user-assisted testing. And then, you're going to get feedback once it goes into production, where you're going to, you may get through all of those tests and then find out there's a slight change that needed to be done before it goes into production, and then that's going to cause some issues. So your security operations people are going to be doing things like monitoring logs and, checking the application, making sure that performance and SLAs are being met, and that your support people are, answering customer calls, that kind of thing. So, So before we go, I found a nice hacking article from a gentleman named Raj Chandel, or Chandel. Sorry about murdering your name. I'll put the links in the show note. It had 4 ways to get Linux privilege escalation, and he talked about 4 different methods by which you can do so. He said when you exploit the victim PC, there would be certain limits to which resist performing some action even after you're having the shell of victim's PC. So he's talking about enumeration rather than specific vulnerabilities or exploits. So he's got a script called linenum and on his GitHub under github.com/rebootuser. The idea is he's enumerating and doing privilege escalation checks against system configurations. We talked about this on our show when we were discussing some of the SANS top 20 security controls, where configuration issues can cause an escalation of privileges. If a user's been set up and the security on that user has not been set properly, may be able to sudo. There may be certain programs or binaries on the system that will run as that, as root, but you can call from that user or vice versa. There may be, additional system information that can be gained from that user, say, certain configuration information for an application or, what have you. So he's got a nice little script that will go through, and you can run it on a local box. It's very similar to, there's an audit type, Linus, Lynis, Linus, that you can use to run audits on boxes for checking set UID and GUID files, whether certain accounts have been locked, certain accounts don't have interactive shell login, that kind of thing. Because those are things you don't really want to have on your box, because if somebody was to run and get access to the daemon, or to a, the Apache user. The user should only be used much like a service account, where it's just running your Apache instances, or www on some Linux versions. You don't want an interactive login or an interactive shell if they was able to take your web application and get programs running as www. You don't want an interactive shell. It's never good. So these kinds of applications or these kinds of scripts will go through and check for those kinds of things. So that's a nifty looking script that you can use to secure your Linux boxes, because Linux hasn't gotten a lot of love recently. It's just mostly been PowerShell stuff. So go ahead and check out his Blogspot site. That was a pretty good one. I've added it to my RSS feed. So I think that's it this week. I'm not trying to replace Mr. Betcher in any way. I just felt weird not having a show go out this week just because it's a holiday. So if you want to reach out and talk to any of us on the show here, Mr. Betcher or myself, please feel free to follow us on Twitter. We're Mr. Betcher. You can find him at BetcherPwned, BoetTCherPwned. You can follow me at Brian Break, Bryan. Our official Breaksec Twitter is at Breaksec, Brakesec. We have a YouTube channel. We're on iTunes. We have an RSS feed. We're on the Google Play Store, SoundCloud, Facebook, Player FM. We're on the Stitcher network and the TuneIn Radio app. So there's really nowhere that you can't get to us. If you're leaving us feedback on iTunes, if you listen to us through iTunes, we appreciate any of the feedback that has been added there. That was it's very helpful for us to get more exposure on iTunes. So if you are doing that, please feel free to leave us a little something over there. If you have any comments or further questions and you don't want to engage us on social media, you can also email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon, so if you feel like you are getting some value from our show, or you're getting CPEs, if you're a CISP or a CISA and you want to share some love this holiday season, please feel free to hit us up on Patreon. It's patreon.com/BDS, the underscore and podcast. So hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And if you're not a U.S.-based American here, hope you had a happy Thursday and Friday, at work. So, this has been a very short but hopefully effective episode of Breaking Down Security. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon.